The 27th woman said no, and the mate bond answered yes. Clara Whitmore felt it before anyone read the letter aloud, a sharp warmth under her ribs, like a match striking in a locked room. She nearly dropped her pen. Across the royal pack hall, King Everett Hale did not move. That was the problem with Everett. Other alphas growled, slammed tables, scared people in simple, honest ways. Everett just sat at the head of the long black table in a tailored suit, one hand beside the silver-crowned seal, and made silence feel like a weather warning. Counselor Victor Sloane unfolded the refusal letter with the solemn pleasure of a man delivering bad news he had personally gift-wrapped. The family of Miss Adelaide Mercer respectfully declines the honor of royal consideration, he announced. Around the hall, 11 Alpha Lords, 6 Luna representatives, and enough pack attorneys to ruin a holiday dinner all pretended not to react. The 27 empty candidate chairs glittered under the chandelier like polished insults. Clara stood near the back wall with the junior clerks, her badge clipped crookedly to her gray blazer, because no one important ever looked at registry staff unless something was missing. She was supposed to take minutes. Quietly, invisibly, like a good low-rank Omega who understood the food chain. Incompatible temperament. Sloane continued, letting the words hang. A few people glanced at Everett as if his temperament might reach across the room and file a complaint. Everett's jaw tightened once. Barely. Clara saw it anyway. She had spent 5 years reading pack records, oath clauses, scent reports, and the tiny lies powerful people hid between official words. This letter had the same phrase as 12 others. Same legal rhythm. Same antique clause. Different noble family. Same invisible hand. That was not fear. That was coordination. Your Majesty, Sloane said, turning toward the throne dais. The council must consider whether the Crescent Throne can remain stable without a bonded queen before the Winter Oath Summit. There it was. Not concern. A leash. Everett lifted his eyes. You are very eager to discuss my stability, Counselor. Sloane smiled. The packs are eager, Your Majesty. Clara heard a soft laugh from 2 clerks beside her. One whispered, no woman with sense would take him. The other murmured, not unless she had a death wish or a crown addiction. Clara kept her face still, but the warmth under her ribs burned brighter. Everett's gaze shifted, not to the women laughing, to her. For one impossible second, the hall narrowed to his gray eyes and the strange, ancient pull in her chest. His wolf saw her. She knew it with no proof at all. Sloane turned back to the room, voice rising for the witnesses. Is there any Omega here willing to accept royal mate consideration under the old law? No one breathed. Clara looked at the refusal letter, then at the empty chairs, then at the king everyone had decided was easier to fear than understand. She set down her pen. The sound was small. The whole hall heard it. Yes, Clara said. I will. For a full second, nobody moved. Then the room remembered how to be offended. Aluna from Denver pressed one gloved hand to her pearls. One of the Alpha Lords made a sound like he had swallowed hot coffee the wrong way. The 2 clerks beside Clara stopped laughing so fast their faces looked unfinished. Clara kept her hands at her sides and tried not to look at the 27 empty chairs, because looking at them would make this feel like a decision, and right now she needed it to feel like a fact. Counselor Sloane stared at her over the top of the refusal letter. Miss Whitmore, he said, with the careful patience people used on children and parking tickets, this is not a clerical vote. I know, Clara said. I was taking the minutes. A few heads turned. Someone near the windows muttered, she cannot be serious. Everett Hale stood. He did it without hurry, and still every wolf in the hall seemed to feel the floor change under them. Clara felt it too. Not fear. Something older. The warmth beneath her ribs pulled tighter, as if an invisible thread had found the center of her and tugged once. Everett looked at her the way kings looked at borders, storms, and other things that might become a problem by morning. Step forward, he said. His voice was quiet. The room made space before Clara even moved. That was how power worked here. It did not always shove. Sometimes it trained everyone else to step aside. Clara walked down the aisle in her department store heels, past the empty chairs, past the noble families pretending not to stare at her blazer, past the silver-crowned seal glowing under the lights. She stopped 6 feet from the throne dais because pack law required that distance unless invited closer. Everett noticed. His eyes sharpened slightly. Good, Clara thought. At least one person in this room still read the handbook. Sloane recovered first. Your Majesty, under the old law, any Omega may volunteer for royal consideration, yes. But the candidate must understand the burden of the position, the scrutiny of the pacts, the danger of public bond testing, and the political implications of standing beside the Crescent Throne. I understand paperwork, Clara said. Public hatred, bad coffee, men in expensive suits pretending their opinions are constitutional emergencies. A shocked silence followed. Lady Margaret Hale, seated near the fire, covered her mouth with 2 fingers. Clara was almost sure she was smiling. Everett was not. Not quite. But something changed around his eyes, a small crack in the winter. Why, he asked. That one word hit harder than Sloane's whole speech. Clara could have said destiny. She could have said loyalty. She could have lied in a pretty way and made the court more comfortable. Instead, she looked at the refusal letter still in Sloane's hand. Because 12 of those refusals use the same legal phrasing, and that phrase has not appeared in open pack law since 1989. Someone is not just rejecting you, Your Majesty. Someone is building a record. Sloane's smile thinned. A junior clerk should be careful when accusing her betters. Clara turned her head. Then it is lucky I accused the paperwork. This time, Lady Margaret did laugh, softly and with real pleasure. Everett stepped down from the dais. The mate bond flared, so suddenly Clara had to steady her breathing. His scent reached her, clean cedar after rain, controlled almost to the point of pain. Her Omega instincts told her to lower her eyes. Clara thanked them for their input and ignored them. Everett stopped in front of her. You are not afraid of me. I did not say that. No. I said yes. There is a difference. For the first time all morning, the king looked less like a monument and more like a man trying not to react. Then he turned to Sloane. Enter Clara Whitmore into royal mate consideration under the old law. The counselor bowed because law had trapped him in public. Everett's gaze returned to Clara, colder now, guarded again. And pull her full background file. Across the room, a registry screen lit up. Clara saw her name, her birth date, her low-rank classification. Then one line appeared in red. Whitmore bloodline, sealed by royal command. The hall went quiet for a different reason. Everett looked at the screen, then at Clara. This time, neither of them pretended the bond was the most dangerous thing in the room. By sunset, Clara Whitmore had been promoted from invisible registry clerk to royal problem, which came with no pay raise and far better shoes judging her from every hallway. The council did not call it an engagement. They called it a 9-day trial bond, because powerful people love taking something old, sacred, and terrifying and making it sound like a parking permit. Clara stood in the West Conference Room, while 3 attorneys read the conditions aloud. She would remain in the royal wing. She would attend all pack functions beside King Everett Hale. She would submit to scent compatibility review, loyalty confirmation, and public oath observation before the Winter Oath Summit. She would not speak to the press, challenge council authority, or wander unescorted through sealed archives. Clara raised her hand. The oldest attorney looked personally wounded. This is not a classroom, Miss Whitmore. Then stop reading like there will be a quiz, Clara said. Lady Margaret Hale made a delicate choking sound into her tea. Everett stood by the window, still as carved stone, but Clara saw his reflection in the glass. His mouth did not smile. His eyes almost did. Counselor Sloane slid a document across the table. Sign here, acknowledging that you understand the risks of entering royal mate consideration. Clara picked up the pen. Does this include the risk of being bored to death by legal repetition? Miss Whitmore. I am reading. She was. Every line. Twice. That was why she saw the trap buried in paragraph 14. If she failed the trial bond, the council could classify her as emotionally compromised and restrict her testimony regarding the refusal letters. Neat. Ugly. Legal enough to wear a tie. Clara set the pen down. I will sign after paragraph 14 is removed. Sloane's face cooled. That clause is standard. Everett turned from the window. No, it is not. The room went quiet. Sloane bowed his head, but his scent soured beneath the expensive cologne. The clause disappeared. Clara signed. That should have felt like a victory. Instead, the mate bond warmed under her ribs again, quiet and steady, as if some part of her had just stepped through a door that would lock behind her. Everett escorted her himself to the royal wing, which made every guard suddenly fascinated by the walls. His rooms were on the top floor of the Crescent Tower, 42 stories above Manhattan, where the city lights glittered like somebody had spilled diamonds across the dark. Everything inside was perfect. Too perfect. Black shelves, gray rugs, files stacked by seal color. No photographs except official ones. No mess. No proof a person lived there unless one counted the exhausted king standing beside the desk. Clara looked around. This room smells like old power and male denial. Everett stared at her. I beg your pardon. I said it is very clean. That is not what you said. No, but it was what I meant politely. Lady Margaret entered behind them carrying a small rosemary plant in a blue ceramic pot. For the study, she announced. Everett looked at it as if it had requested voting rights. Absolutely not. Wonderful, Margaret said, handing it to Clara. He is already bonding with it. Clara placed the plant on his desk, directly beside the crown seal. Everett opened his mouth, then stopped. His wolf had gone alert. Clara felt it before he hit it. A low, curious pressure in the room, not threatening, just awake. She touched the edge of a sealed oath file on the desk and felt a flash of cold run through her fingers. Not normal cold. Not paper cold. Something missing. Something cut out. Clara pulled her hand back. Everett noticed. What did you feel? He asked. Before she could answer, a red security mark appeared on the file screen beside her name. Whitmore bloodline access denied. Royal Archive restriction active. Clara looked at Everett. Your Majesty, she said softly, why does your palace know more about my family than I do? Everett did not answer fast enough, and that was the answer Clara hated most. Kings were trained to speak through disasters, funerals, pack raids, budget hearings, and elderly senators with microphones. If Everett Hale needed silence, then the truth was not small. He looked at the red security mark on the screen, then at Clara's hand still hovering above the oath file. I did not seal your bloodline, he said. Clara gave him a flat look. That is the kind of sentence guilty people say when they want credit for being specific. Lady Margaret quietly closed the study door behind her. The click sounded much louder than it should have. Clara, she said gently, some records were sealed before Everett took the throne. That does not make me feel better. It was not meant to. Everett stepped around the desk, but Clara moved back before he could get close enough for the mate bond to do that warm, confusing thing under her ribs. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His face did not change, but the air around him tightened. His wolf hated distance. The man pretended not to. Your mother's name? He asked. Marion Whitmore. Lady Margaret's breath caught. Small. Sharp. Clara heard it anyway. Everett turned toward his aunt. You knew her. Margaret looked at the rosemary plant on the desk, as if it had suddenly become the least dangerous living thing in the room. I knew of her. Clara laughed once, without humor. That is palace language for yes, but inconveniently. Before anyone could answer, Everett's tablet chimed. The public dining schedule had been moved up. Counselor Sloan had invited 6 pack leaders, 3 Luna families, and every person in New York who enjoyed watching an Omega bleed socially without leaving marks. Clara understood the move immediately. If they could not remove her by law, they would shrink her in public. The royal dining hall sat beneath a glass ceiling with city lights above and old pack banners along the walls. Clara entered beside Everett wearing the same gray blazer because nobody had thought to give the registry girl a gown, and Clara refused to apologize for owning practical clothing. Conversation dipped as they walked in. Not stopped. Dipped. Like people wanted her to hear just enough. Is that her? The clerk. Brave or stupid? Usually the same thing in low ranks. Clara kept walking. Everett's hand flexed once at his side. She did not look at it. She did not need him rescuing her from whispers. Not yet. A broad alpha from the Montana Iron Pack leaned back in his chair and let his dominance push across the room, heavy as summer thunder. 2 others followed. It was subtle enough to deny and rude enough to smell. Clara's pulse jumped. Her Omega instincts advised her to lower her eyes, soften her voice, make herself smaller. Clara had spent years ignoring bad advice from men with titles, so ignoring biology felt almost familiar. She picked up her water glass, took one calm sip, and said, Article 7 of the Royal Dining Accord prohibits dominance pressure during neutral meals. First offense is a formal warning. Second is removal from the table. Third is a written apology to the kitchen staff, because they should not have to serve dinner during a power contest. The Montana Alpha stared at her. Are you quoting table law at me? only because interpretive dance seemed less clear. Lady Margaret coughed into her napkin. Everett set his own glass down with quiet precision. The pressure in the room vanished. Not because he crushed it, because everyone remembered he could. Clara looked at the men first, not at Everett. Thank you for your cooperation. For the first time since she had met him, Everett almost smiled where people could see it. Almost. Later, as the first course arrived untouched by half the room, Clara found another refusal letter tucked beneath her plate. Same old phrasing, same hidden hand. But this one had a scent mark underneath the ink, faint wintergreen and burnt paper. Everett saw her face change. What is it? He asked. Clara folded the letter once and slipped it into her blazer pocket. Proof, she said softly. And someone wanted me to find it before dessert. The letter under Clara's plate should have gone straight into evidence. Instead, by sunrise, it had become the reason 5 council witnesses were standing around a silver circle on the marble floor, pretending this was all perfectly normal breakfast behavior. The moon scent recognition was supposed to happen on day 7. Sloane moved it to day 5 with an emergency petition and a smile, so clean it made Clara want to check it for fingerprints. The packs require reassurance, he said, hands folded over his dark blue tie. Miss Whitmore has made serious implications. The bond should be tested before her claims disturb the summit. Clara stood at the edge of the circle in a plain navy dress Lady Margaret had found somewhere in the royal wing. It fit well enough, which bothered Clara because nothing in this palace should have known her size. Everett stood opposite her, black suit, silver cuff links, expression locked down so tightly it could have passed inspection at a bank vault. He had barely spoken to her since dinner. Not because he was angry. That would have been easier. He was thinking. Kings thinking too quietly were how bad laws got born. A Luna witness read the old words from a leather-bound oath book. The Omega enters freely. The Alpha answers without force. The bond reveals recognition, deception, or absence. Clara looked at Everett. That sounds comforting. It is not meant to be, he said. Of course not. That would be off-brand. His eyes flickered. Almost a smile. Gone before the council could tax it. Clara stepped into the circle. The silver line glowed faintly under her shoes. Cool at first, then warm. The mate bond answered so fast she forgot to breathe. It rose through her like standing too close to a fireplace after walking home in January rain. Across from her, Everett's control cracked just enough for the room to feel it. The lights above them trembled. One witness grabbed the back of a chair. Sloane's eyes brightened with satisfaction. Everett's wolf pressed close to the surface. Not wild, not cruel, but urgent. Clara felt the warning inside the warmth. Then came the other scent. Wintergreen. Burnt paper. Hidden beneath the ceremonial incense. Threaded through the silver circle like a lie wearing perfume. Clara turned her head toward the council bench. The same scent as the refusal letters. The same scent on the folded note beneath her plate. Your Majesty, she said, carefully. There is someone else in the circle. Sloane stepped forward. Impossible. Clara pointed toward the oath book. Not a person. A mark. Someone altered this ritual. The witnesses stirred. Everett saw it too. She could tell by the way his hand closed once at his side. For 1 second, Clara thought he would let her speak. For 1 second, she believed the bond meant trust. Then Everett's voice cut through the hall. The recognition is concluded. Clara stared at him. No, it is not. Enough. The word was quiet. Royal. Final. The silver circle dimmed. The witnesses began whispering. Sloane looked almost delighted. Clara stepped out of the circle with her face calm because she refused to give them the entertainment of watching her hurt. Everett moved toward her. Clara, do not. Her voice came out steady. That was something, at least. You asked me to stand in your hall, where your scrutiny, and trust your law. The first time the law points at your counsel, you shut my mouth. Pain crossed his face so quickly most people would have missed it. Clara was not most people. I was protecting you, he said. That is what men call it when they make the decision themselves. She walked back to the royal wing alone. The hallways seemed longer now, colder, less ridiculous. The mate bond stayed warm under her ribs, which felt unfair. By the time she reached her door, an envelope waited on the carpet. No seal, no signature. Inside was a copy of a restricted archive page with her mother's name printed in black ink. Marion Whitmore, Royal Mate System Witness. Status sealed. Beneath it, someone had written one sentence by hand. Ask your king what happened to the last fearless Omega. Clara did not sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed until the city outside the tower turned from black to bruised blue. The archive page spread across her knees like a verdict nobody had bothered to mail on time. Marion Whitmore, Royal Mate System Witness. Status sealed. Her mother had never said those words. Marion had said things like eat before you argue, never sign a form you have not read, and rich people only call tradition sacred when it pays rent in their house. By 5 in the morning, Clara was in the lower archive with her badge, Margaret's stolen access card, and a cup of coffee so bad it deserved a council hearing. The sealed Whitmore files were buried under 3 layers of royal restriction, which was insulting because whoever had hidden them clearly assumed no clerk would be stubborn, underpaid, and emotionally motivated at the same time. Clara was all 3. She opened the first file and felt the cold again, that strange missing place in the paper, like truth had been cut out with a clean knife. Marion Whitmore had not been a scandal. She had been a pack law advocate. She had represented low-rank Omegas from small packs in forced bond disputes, inheritance blocks, and illegal mate pressure cases. 20 years ago, she had found the first pattern: noble Omega candidates refusing royal consideration with identical phrasing, identical witness spacing, identical scent certifications. The same pattern Clara had seen in Everett's refusals. Clara's throat tightened. Her mother had not been paranoid. She had been early. The next file held a hearing transcript. Marion had warned the old Crown Council that someone was manipulating mate records to control succession. 3 days later, her testimony was sealed for pack stability. 1 week after that, she lost her license. 1 month later, she left New York with an infant daughter and a name that made doors close softly. Clara pressed her hand over her mouth, not to cry, but to keep from making a sound the archive might remember. She was right, Everett said behind her. Clara turned so fast the chair scraped the floor. He stood between 2 shelves, tie loosened, hair not perfect for once. He looked less like a king and more like a man who had walked all night and still arrived too late. How long have you known? She asked. Everett looked at the open file. I was 16 when my father sealed it. I knew there had been a witness. I did not know her name until last night. That is a beautiful answer for avoiding the ugly one. His jaw flexed. I knew the crown buried something. Clara laughed once, sharp and tired. And you became very good at holding the shovel. The words landed. He did not defend himself. That made it worse somehow. My father told me some truths start wars, Everett said. I believed him. Clara closed the file. Buried truths start them too. They just take longer to rot. For a moment, neither of them moved. The mate bond was still there, warm and aching beneath her ribs, completely unfair in its loyalty. Clara wanted to hate him cleanly. The bond would not let the feeling stay simple. Everett took 1 step closer. Sloan is setting a trap for the Winter Oath Summit. If you walk out now, he will use your mother's record to destroy you. No, Clara said, gathering the copied files into her arms. He will use my silence to destroy everyone else. His eyes changed. Not anger. Fear, dressed as control. Clara. She walked past him. I am withdrawing from the trial bond. The words hurt more than she expected. Everett went still. You do not have to do that. I do if I want my testimony to belong to me. She reached the royal wing just as the first guards changed shifts. Her suitcase was small. It had always been small. Low-rank people learned not to own anything they could not carry in one trip. She opened the door to leave and stopped. Everett's wolf stood in the hallway, half shadow and silver-eyed, not attacking, not growling, just blocking the way with the terrible quiet of a creature asking for the one thing its king had never learned how to say. Please stay. Clara did not stay because the wolf asked. That was what she told herself while she stood in the royal elevator with her suitcase beside her, Everett 3 feet away, and his wolf gone silent inside him like a storm behind glass. She stayed because leaving before the Winter Oath Summit would let Sloan write the ending. Clara Whitmore had many flaws. Letting smug men finish her mother's sentences was not one of them. By noon, the summit hall was full. 19 pack banners hung from the vaulted ceiling, each one stitched with old victories, old grudges, and the kind of family pride that made Thanksgiving look peaceful. Alpha leaders arrived in dark suits. Luna representatives arrived with diamond pins sharp enough to double as warnings. Reporters waited behind the press line, hungry but well-behaved, because even American media understood not to heckle werewolves indoors. Clara entered alone. That mattered. She was no longer under trial bond protection. No royal escort. No candidate ribbon. Just a low-rank Omega in a navy dress, carrying copied files against her chest while half the room decided whether she was brave, reckless, or badly raised. Everett stood at the throne dais, crownless, shoulders straight, eyes fixed on her. The mate Bond reached across the hall with a warmth so steady it almost made her angry. He had no right to feel like home while standing inside the institution that had buried her mother. Counselor Sloane stepped to the center floor before Clara reached the witness table. Before this summit proceeds, the council must address a matter of royal instability, he said. Naturally, the man could poison a birthday cake and call it protocol. A screen lit behind him. Clara's registry image appeared beside her mother's sealed file. Murmurs moved through the hall. Marion Whitmore was removed from PAC law practice after agitating against the royal mate system, Sloane announced. Her daughter has now attempted to compromise that same system by attaching herself to the king through a questionable bond response. Clara felt the words hit the room and spread. Questionable. Compromise. Attaching. Clean words. Dirty work. Everett took one step forward. Sloane smiled like he had been waiting for it. Your Majesty, for the sake of the Crescent Throne, I invite you to clarify that Miss Whitmore was a failed trial candidate with no standing before this summit. There it was. The safe path. Everett could cut her loose and keep the crown untouched for one more day. Clara looked at him and made herself breathe. He looked back, and for the first time, she saw the fight in him before the control covered it. Then Everett stepped down from the dais. Not toward Sloane. Toward her. The hall went so quiet Clara could hear the lights hum. Everett stopped beside her, not in front of her. Marion Whitmore was not removed because she lied, he said. She was removed because the crown was afraid she was right. Sloane's expression cracked. Just a hairline. Everett turned to the PAC leaders. My father sealed testimony that should have protected your daughters, your sisters, your future Lunas. The council called it stability. It was cowardice wearing a state seal. Clara's throat tightened despite herself. The room shifted, not softening, but waking up. Sloane lifted his hand. Then emergency succession protocol is required. Silver lines flashed across the summit floor. Old oath marks burned pale beneath the marble, circling the alpha leaders like a trap that had been waiting politely for years. One by one, knees hit the floor as the false oath forced them down. Gasps broke across the hall. Everett stayed standing. Clara stayed standing. So did 3 PAC leaders near the back, all of them staring at the floor in horror. Sloane's smile returned. Behold, he said, voice ringing. A king whose summit collapses under his own bloodline. Clara looked at the glowing marks, then at the copied files in her hands. Wintergreen and burnt paper filled the air. She understood. The trap was not beneath the summit. It was inside the signatures. Clara had spent 5 years in the Royal PAC registry being ignored by men who thought filing was what happened after important work was done. Those men were currently on their knees under a forged oath trap, so Clara felt history had developed a sense of humor. Everett took one step toward the glowing silver lines, and the whole floor answered with a hard pulse of pressure. Several alpha leaders gasped. The trap fed on force. Of course it did. Sloane had built the perfect insult for Everett Hale. The stronger the king pushed, the guiltier he looked. Stop, Clara said. Everett froze. Every face turned to her, which was inconvenient because Clara preferred audiences only when they were made of paper. Sloane's voice cut across the hall. Miss Whitmore has no standing here. Clara lifted the copied files. That is funny. Your forged signatures gave my mother standing 20 years ago, and you hated it then too. A murmur moved through the summit. Sloane's smile thinned to something sharp. Careful. I am careful. That is why you are nervous. Clara stepped closer to the nearest oath mark. The silver light climbed the edge of her shoe, cold enough to ache, but not enough to stop her. The mate bond flared behind her ribs. Everett felt it. She knew because his hand moved half an inch, then stopped. He wanted to pull her back. He did not. That was the first apology he had made without words. Clara knelt beside the glowing signature strip and looked, really looked. Not at the magic. At the administration. These oaths were not signed on the same day, she said. The ink layers are wrong. One of the kneeling PAC leaders, a gray-haired alpha from Oregon, lifted his head with effort. What does that mean? It means someone added witness consent after the original summit record was closed. Clara pointed to 3 names. See the spacing? No clerk trained after 1995 would format a witness line like that. But someone copying old documents would. Lady Margaret's voice came from near the side doors, cool and sweet as iced tea with a blade in it. Victor always did admire tradition more than competence. Sloane turned toward the exit. Too late. Margaret stood there with 3 retired Luna guards, all white-haired, all smiling like church ladies who had just found out bingo was a contact sport. Clara kept reading. 8 forged witness marks, 12 manipulated refusal letters, 1 emergency succession protocol designed to activate only when the king publicly challenged council authority. She looked up at Sloane. You did not want a stable throne. You wanted a frightened one. Everett stepped beside her then, not in front, not over her shoulder, beside her. What do you need? He asked. Clara almost missed her next breath. Not what are you doing? Not let me handle it. What do you need? She looked at the silver lines. Stop fighting the oath. It is using your alpha command as fuel. His eyes held hers. And if I let go, then you trust me. The hall heard it. The bond heard it too. Everett closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, the pressure around him changed. The king did not become smaller. He became still. His wolf lowered its head inside the bond, not beaten, not tamed, listening. The silver lines flickered. Clara stepped into the oath circle. Pain sparked up her legs, clean and bright, but she stayed upright. I enter as a free Omega witness, she said, voice carrying across the summit. I say yes to testimony. Yes to the truth being recorded. Yes to the bond only if the law stops being a mask for cowards. The floor went white. Then the forged names burned out one by one, leaving black gaps where lies had been standing. Around the room, alpha leaders rose from their knees, furious and awake. Sloane backed toward the side door and found Margaret waiting with her hands folded. Clara looked at Everett, breath shaking, files clutched to her chest. For the record, she said, your counsel has terrible handwriting. Everett looked at the ruined oath marks, then at her. This time, he smiled where everyone could see it. By the time the Winter Oath Summit ended, the room looked less like a royal chamber and more like a very expensive room where everyone had finally admitted the plumbing was rotten. Counselor Sloane was not dragged out because Everett would not give him the dignity of a scene. Lady Margaret simply took the forged oath book from his hands, patted his sleeve like a disappointed aunt at a wedding, and said, Victor, dear, you have mistaken silence for loyalty for the last time. The retired Luna guards escorted him out while 19 pack leaders watched with the sober expression of people realizing how many years they had spent bowing to paperwork with teeth. The council seat was stripped before sunset. The forged refusals were voided. Every Omega family named in the files received public notice, legal restoration, and the right to testify without council interference. Marion Whitmore's record was opened on the summit floor. Not cleaned, not softened, opened. Clara stood very still when her mother's name appeared on the screen, no longer sealed in red, no longer buried under stability clauses and royal embarrassment. For a moment, she was not thinking about the king, the bond, or the packs. She was thinking about a woman who had packed one suitcase, carried her baby out of New York, and still taught her daughter to read every line before signing. Everett did not touch Clara. He did not crowd her grief with comfort he had not yet earned. He only stood beside her, crownless, silent, and for once, silence did not feel like a wall. It felt like respect. 3 days later, Clara returned to the Royal Pack Registry because someone had to fix the filing system, and apparently saving the throne did not automatically improve document storage. She found Everett waiting by her old desk, wearing a dark coat instead of ceremonial black, with no guards in sight, and a corrected oath in his hand. The clerks nearby suddenly discovered urgent reasons to stare into cabinets. Clara set down her coffee. Your Majesty, if this is another form, I am charging overtime. Everett looked at the paper, then at her. It is an apology. Clara folded her arms. Those are harder to format. I know. His voice was low, rough around the edges in a way the summit had never heard. I am sorry I stopped you in the scent circle. I am sorry I called control protection. I am sorry the crown treated your mother's truth like a threat because it was easier than admitting she was right. Clara looked at him for a long moment. The mate bond warmed, steady and patient, no longer yanking, no longer pleading. Just there. An apology is not a crown jewel, she said. You do not hand it over once and expect applause. Everett nodded. Then I will keep earning it. She believed him. Not completely, not blindly, but enough to take the corrected oath and read it. Every line. Twice. At the bottom, Everett had added a new clause. No Omega testimony could be sealed by royal command without public review. Clara's throat tightened. You changed the law. You showed me the throne was never meant to be a locked door. At the winter moon ceremony, Clara did not stand behind the Alpha King. She stood beside him, still a registry clerk, still an Omega, still nobody's decoration. Everett addressed the Pax with the city lights shining behind him. Power that cannot be questioned is not strength, he said. It is fear with better furniture. Clara almost smiled. That sounded suspiciously like her influence. When the ceremony ended, Everett's wolf appeared beneath the moonlit glass, silver-eyed and calm. It lowered its head to Clara once, not as a command, not as a claim, but as recognition. The hall bowed after that, not to a future queen they had been ordered to accept, but to an Omega who had made a king understand that loyalty was not obedience, love was not possession, and leadership meant telling the truth even when the truth made the throne feel smaller. Clara leaned toward Everett and whispered, "For the record, your kingdom still has terrible filing habits." Everett smiled like a man learning that joy could survive witnesses. And somewhere beyond sealed records, forged oaths, and all the old frightened men who had confused control with peace, Marion Whitmore's truth finally had a home.